In the 1820s, a man sold an entire country. Land, government bonds, even its own money. Thousands of people invested. Hundreds packed up their lives and sailed across the ocean to start a new life there. There was just one problem. The country didn't exist. None of it. This is the story of the greatest fraud ever pulled, and the people who paid for it with their lives. His name was Gregor MacGregor. MacGregor was a Scottish soldier and adventurer, charming, fearless, and a spectacular liar. He'd fought in real wars in South America under Simón Bolívar during the Wars of Independence, and he came home with real military glory. But glory doesn't pay the bills. So MacGregor decided to invent something to sell. In 1820, on the Mosquito Coast of Central America in what's now Honduras, MacGregor met a local indigenous king. After some drinks and gifts, the king granted him a huge stretch of land, millions of acres of undeveloped jungle and swamp. To anyone else, it was worthless wilderness. To MacGregor, it was the raw material for a lie of staggering ambition. He didn't sell the land as jungle. He invented a country and laid it on top. He called it Poyais. He gave it a flag, a coat of arms, and a government. And he gave himself a title, Cazique, the Prince of Poyais. Then he described it. Poyais, he said, had a beautiful capital city, St. Joseph, with paved streets, a domed cathedral, a parliament building, an opera house, and a bank of Poyais. The soil was so rich you could harvest 3 crops a year. The rivers, he claimed, had chunks of gold sitting in them. The natives were friendly and spoke English. It was paradise, empty and waiting for British settlers. Every word was a fantasy. There was no city, no cathedral, no bank, no opera house. There was no St. Joseph. There was nothing but mosquito-filled jungle and empty coastline. Poyais existed only on paper and in the imagination of everyone MacGregor talked to. To sell it, he went all in. He published a 350-page guidebook to Poyais. Its history, its economy, its wildlife, written under a fake author's name. It looked like serious scholarship. It was complete fiction, and it convinced people Poyais was as real as France. He opened official Poyaisian offices in London and Edinburgh. He appointed ambassadors. He held lavish receptions. He even got himself received in respectable society as visiting royalty. The more official it looked, the less anyone questioned whether the country behind it was real. Then came the money. MacGregor sold Poyaisian government bonds on the London Stock Exchange, borrowing money on behalf of a nation that did not exist. He raised what would today be worth tens of millions. Investors believed they were funding a real, up-and-coming country. He sold land certificates to ordinary families. He sold government job titles and military commissions to people who wanted status. Cobblers, clerks, and farmers handed over their savings to become landowners and officials in the new world of Poyais. And here's the cruelest detail. He printed official Poyais dollars, colorful paper currency. He convinced emigrants to exchange their real British pounds for this Poyaisian money before they left, so they'd have local cash when they arrived. He took their real money and handed them paper from a country that didn't exist. They thanked him for it. Why did so many believe? Because it was the 1820s, the age of emigration and new worlds. People genuinely sailed off to build lives in faraway places all the time. A new British-friendly colony with gold rivers and free land wasn't absurd to them. It was a dream, and MacGregor sold the dream with total conviction. In 1822 and 1823, around 250 settlers sold everything they owned, boarded ships, and set sail for Poyais. Among them were families, skilled tradesmen, even a man appointed royal banker of a bank that did not exist. They crossed the Atlantic full of hope. And then they arrived. There was no city, no port, no people to greet them, just dense jungle, swamp, and silence. At first, they assumed they were in the wrong place. Slowly, the truth set in. There was no Poyais. There never had been. The ships left. The settlers were stranded on a hostile coast with no shelter, no infrastructure, and supplies that wouldn't last. The rainy season came, and with it came disease. This is where the con stops being clever and becomes a tragedy. Malaria and yellow fever swept through the camp, People who had given up everything for a promised paradise began to die. By the time a nearby British settlement in Belize learned of them and sent rescue, it was too late for many. Of the roughly 250 who sailed, fewer than half ever made it home. Around 180 are believed to have died. And MacGregor? As the survivors struggled home with the truth, he was already gone. When the scandal broke, he claimed he was the real victim, that his honest settlers had been mismanaged by others, that Poyais was real and had been sabotaged. He blamed everyone but himself. Then he did the unthinkable. He fled to France and tried to run the entire Poyais scheme all over again. New investors, new land sales, a fresh batch of would-be settlers, the same imaginary country. This time the authorities caught on. French officials grew suspicious, blocked the emigrant ships, and arrested him for fraud. He was put on trial in Paris. And astonishingly, he talked his way out. He was acquitted. The man who invented a nation, sold its bonds, printed its money, and sent hundreds to their deaths, walked out of court a free man. For years afterward, he kept floating smaller versions of the Poyais scheme, still selling pieces of his imaginary country to anyone who'd buy. The dream refused to die because he refused to let it. And his final act is the most unbelievable of all. He moved to Venezuela, the country whose independence he genuinely fought for decades earlier. They welcomed him as a hero. They granted him citizenship and an army pension. When he died in Caracas in 1845, he was buried with full military honors, generals carrying his coffin. Gregor MacGregor proved something genuinely frightening, that a country is, in the end, just a story people agree to believe. Give them a flag, a guidebook, an official-looking office, and enough confidence, and they'll buy land, hand over their savings, and sail across an ocean toward a place that was never there. He didn't forge a single coastline. He forged belief. It happened. You just weren't told. If you want the true stories that sound impossible, subscribe. New one tomorrow.